Let me just first introduce the panelists. I see to my immediate left Tricia Berry. She's with the University of Texas here in Austin in the Women in Engineering program. Glad to have you. And sitting next to her is Associate Professor of Manufacturing Engineering, Texas State University, Dr. Bahram Asiabanpour. Next to him is our first student, John Gizdich III, who's the president of the Student Government Association and founder of the STEM Academy at the Austin Community College District. And next to him is Monique Jones, who's a senior undergraduate at Texas State University. And can you tell us what your major is there? Yeah, just move that.
My major?
How do we turn that on?
They're just not on.
So my major is electrical engineering with specification and computer engineering.
Oh my, you're going to be a high-paid first job seeker. All right, let's get started here in talking about energy education at the college and university level. We've kind of taken a little focus towards STEM as one of the pillars of that education. And I'd like to just kind of go down the row here and ask the panelists how they got interested in STEM and what inspired them to do that, or why did you get interested in STEM education? Go ahead.
Okay. So my background is engineering. I got interested in STEM at a young age. I think I probably blame my parents on that for sending me off to STEM-related summer camps and programs and things like that when they perhaps saw that as something that I had a natural affinity to when I was younger. I was always, the typical good at math, good at science, had great role models along the way, and ended up majoring in chemical engineering when I went off to school.
Wow.
And then have stayed involved in advocating for others to go into STEM throughout my career, which started as an industry professional. I worked at the Dow Chemical Company for a number of years before coming back to UT Austin, where I get to do this every day.
Wow.
Yes, my interest on STEM started way earlier. I grew up in the southwest of Iran, which is a hub for oil and hosting the biggest refinery in the world at that time. So I was waking up with the smell of oil every day. So, and we were seeing that basically the entire city was segregated, not by race, but by type of profession and type of job that people own. So we had a good neighborhood for the engineers that had high-paying jobs and very good neighborhoods, and then we had military, Navy people, and then teachers, and then so somehow it was very divided city. So it was peer pressure, family pressure that pushed me in that area, and I found it a very good area to pursue.
John?
I became interested in STEM since I was 14 years old, and it's weird how I got started to be interested in STEM. I was really young, didn't have anything to do, I was bored, I was sitting on the couch, didn't know what to do that day, and suddenly I have this vision of this world of the future. It's like I was remote viewing that world. I saw robots roaming the streets, spaceships that can go to different planets, and a lot of those things, and I feel like I belong in that world, and it was an overwhelming feeling when I first experienced that, and that's when I found out that I want to be some kind of engineer or scientist. And that's it.
Okay, thanks. Monique?
I got started in STEM, not necessarily engineering initially. I started out wanting to do plastic surgery since I was little. And I double majored for a while in electrical engineering and biology and minored in chemistry and decided it really wasn't something that I really was passionate about. And so I took a career test, and they said that, I was high in math and that I should either be an engineer or some type of occupation in the STEM category. And so I chose electrical engineering since my dad's an electrical engineer, and I've been watching him do things like that since I was a young girl. So that's how I got involved.
That's interesting. I see a family kind of theme through here, how important the family is for kids, and I guess we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about K through 12, but it resonates through everyone's background as we're talking about what led them into the STEM area. So that's interesting. What do you think the biggest challenge is facing energy or STEM education in today's universities? What's the biggest challenge? And anyone can answer that.
I can answer. The biggest challenge, the biggest challenge I see in energy and STEM education is there are not enough students who are passionate in their STEM-related majors. And some STEM students are studying their academic discipline just solely for the money, for the future, and what they could get for the jobs. And with this kind of mindset, students would become mediocre engineers and scientists. The world does not need this. The world needs good engineers and scientists that could innovate and invent new technologies, and so that could change our world forever, for the better. There will be different challenges in the future, but as of now, I cannot see what kind of challenges there will be.
How do you build that kind of motivation or that enthusiasm or that flame, that fire in the belly, as we've heard so many times? How do you build that?
It's a lot of passion. I love doing what I do, and I feel like students are just taking advantage of the opportunity just to get the money. And when students are actually doing it only for the money and not for passion, there could be a lot of errors like design flaws or some kind of accidents like rockets that blows up when they try to launch a space, things like that, really. So passion is why I'm so fired up with this.
I think that's great. I guess we're looking for some golden nuggets or ways that we can engender that passion.
And I'll add on to that I think one of the challenges is that students don't know what STEM is all about. They don't know what engineering is all about. Even if they go and they study engineering, they don't necessarily know what it means to be an engineer once you graduate. What does that work actually do? What do you actually work on when you're out there in industry? And the energy industry is no different than really any of the other industries. If you don't have the role models, if you don't have those hands-on experiences, if you don't have the internships and the opportunities to really explore what those different disciplines are, then you can't have that passion because you don't even know what it is. And so I think within higher ed, there's a lot of options for students. There's a lot of different disciplines that are competing for their interests, for their attention. In the energy industry, what I see at UT Austin, it's oil and gas. The power side of things, we don't see the power folks on campus like we see all of the oil and gas folks all the time, every day, every week, constantly. So if the students don't see you, they don't know what it's about, they don't have role models to show them what they can be when they grow up and go out and become that engineer or scientist, it's hard to have that passion, it's hard to move forward into those spaces. You've got to have the role models, you have to have those experiences. And the more we can give it to them, the more we can have those experiences happen in higher ed, in the K-12 space, the more we'll see students heading down those pathways.
Yeah.
I can add one more challenge as an educator. Basically, I see that the technology is moving very fast, but the rigidity and the structure for the coursework and type of academic programs you have is really not allowing us to change with the technologies quickly. Offering a new program or offering a new course is always years, is not months. So it's always hard to adjust ourselves quickly. So it's a very minor thing. Maybe the best way I found is adjusting ourselves by doing research in that area, injecting somehow the content into the program, but adding a new program and responding to the market and type of technology is always a challenge. This is not fast enough.
I know that some universities and colleges have speakers that come in that talk about providing role models for students. Does that occur in all of your institutions, or how does that work? Monique, what is?
I would say there are, but not in the energy, oil, and gas field. I mean, every STEM fair I've attended at Texas State, I've only seen probably Halliburton, Slumberger, I think it's called, and what is it? Schlumberger, sorry. And then that's about it. Those are the two major ones. And they don't, I mean, when you talk to them, they just want to make sure you have the requirements, which is a 2.5 GPA, and like just the minor things. They just want to get you signed up to, you know, interview. And they don't really tell you what they do or what it's about. And so you have no idea. And all you can think about is, okay, are they going to pay me good? Are the benefits okay? Like, because you don't know what you're going to do when you get that job. And as far as the university curriculum, there is no talk about energy, barely, very little. Like I found out about energy and oil and gas and getting excited about it through the company that I interned for. And so we do thermoelectrics. And when I heard about the Seebeck effect and the Peltier effect, that stuff like really intrigued me, but that wasn't getting taught in the classroom.
How would you stimulate that being taught in the classroom? Do you have any ideas?
Well, people always ask me, you know, where do you intern or where are you working? So I tell them what I do on a day-to-day basis and how thermoelectrics can, you know, affect the world. But other than that, I would say it would be up to like the politics of the university. It comes up to that, and that's really a touchy topic.
Well,
And I would throw in that really one of the ways that faculty can do it, there's a great NSF, National Science Foundation funded project called Engage Engineering. You can look it up, engageengineering.org. And they, through that project, were working with universities to infuse 3 retention-based strategies into the curriculum. And it wasn't even infusing it into the curriculum, it was really just changing the way people practiced on campus in some of their teaching strategies and other strategies. And one of those strategies was using everyday examples. So you're still teaching the same theory, you're still teaching the same core fundamental pieces of the education, but instead of, my favorite example is thinking about you know, physics and statics and dynamics and the typical, you know, here's your box and we're going to press on the box with this arrow force doing this, and what's going to happen? Who cares? Nobody cares about a force on a box. Really, nobody cares. But if you talk about, tell me about the force of pressing the button on my iPhone and what happens there, then you make it relevant and you make it real world and you make it connected to me and something that I can see and I can touch and I can relate to. So it doesn't take that much energy, so to speak, from a faculty member to change some of those examples. I don't have to change all the examples, just a few throughout the course of a semester to make them relatable, real world, connected to whatever the topic at hand is, and that can make a huge difference for students.
well, I can understand why Monique would say the politics of the university, because it takes so long to build a new course, as Bahram was talking about a little bit earlier. But one of the steps in building new courses at some universities, and I'll let Tricia and Bahram speak to this, is having industry or an outside representative as part of a curriculum development team. Do you have that at your institution?
Yes, we do have a senior design projects for almost every engineering program that mostly they are sponsored by university, by industry. So that's the best connection, that almost every single student is graduating with at least one industry experience, real world experience. So that's something that I'm insisting all projects be sponsored. While it's more difficult working with those type of professionals, the students are young, make mistakes, but we buy that difficulty, and the student try to get involved. And based on my experience last 15 years, 12, 13 years at Texas State, what I found is a student remember only thing that they did, their own projects. I've seen some students coming back after 10 years. They don't remember barely they remember my name or the course they took, but they knew exactly every detail of the project they did because they spend time, months on that one, so they know every detail of that. So I found it's a good thing to inject almost every course with some small project that they get involved and at least they remember that part. So that's something I try to do.
Is that one course, or is that
No, it's a chain of courses. Yeah, senior design is one course, but since I saw that's effective, I'm almost adding to every course I'm teaching sort of projects.
Wow.
Small or big, it's going to be very effective. And it's attracting, and it's a good thing to react to market because lots of new technologies you can put as a projects. If it's not in the coursework and syllabus, still you can add it as a new aspects to the projects. So that's the way I try to involve that. But I have a good collaboration with companies, almost 20 companies I collaborated with them. And we try to bring them as a guest lecturer. Most of them former students. Alumni, the students are attaching to them and interacting very well. So it's a real life experience. I found some students from US, from native Texans, they went to India and China working there. I said, look at them, the manufacturing people working in China. So I brought them here on campus and they say, yeah, so they have to get international exposure. They need to be open-minded. It's not just a local thing anymore. So even manufacturing is getting international.
So do you have the same kind of thing at University of Texas?
Yeah, we have the senior design courses. It's very similar, same setup where companies will sponsor projects and the students and teams will work on those with the corporate partners or typically some sort of industry mentor that comes with that from the companies. So it's an investment from the companies to participate in something like that. There's a financial investment, there's a people investment. But if you want those students coming out on the other end and to have them understand your industry or to have that experience, then perhaps that's one of the prices to pay. I think there's other places that companies can easily plug in though on a campus, whether it's sponsoring a student organization meeting and coming and sharing what you do and bringing those role models into the kind of out of school space at higher ed, or there's a lot of introductory engineering classes that happen on our campuses where we're looking again for those industry role models to come in and share, this is what you can do as an engineer, so that we can help those first year students in particular see kind of that light at the end of the tunnel to get them through the math or the calculus, the physics classes that they may or may not see being directly relatable to what they want to do as an engineer down the road. So there's a lot of places to plug in. I think it's a matter of asking those questions on the college campuses, finding those people to partner with. There's plenty of opportunities for sure.
Let's talk a little bit from a student point of view, how students view energy or the field of energy and maybe even STEM as a selection of high-tech fields. John, I noticed that you're the founder of a STEM group there at Austin Community College. Can you tell us kind of how that works, and also do you have any involvement in recruiting students into the STEM field, and then maybe how that would go?
We try to expand what they learn in class with practical applications. Like, for example, if they learn some kind of circuitry in engineering physics 2, they can start learning how to actually work with like Arduinos initially, so they know how a resistor works, how everything works basically, and so we promote hands-on experience with everything really, and and not many classmates of mine really tell me how they view about energy because they're more concerned about transferring to a four-year school. So, so a reason why I made STEM Academy, so I can instead of them being too concerned about, too focused about transferring, they can be more focused about the areas of study. Just do what they want to do and not just go what kind of school they want to go to. So for STEM Academy, our plan is to make a solo car, robotics, have some kind of mathematics competition, and software development, and some kind of experiments in natural sciences like biology, chemistry, physics, and so on. So that was the mission of STEM Academy, and unfortunately, this is my last semester here, and it's up to the person to take over this student organization. And for recruiting, I usually get professors to hand out flyers. So, in the flyers we have to explain what we do exactly, and I have my contact information and everything. And the best way for me, so they join STEM Academy by contacting me through email. And that's how I recruit people on STEM Academy. And right now we have 10 people, and we're growing. And it's relatively new. It started like last year. Initially, we were trying to start a silicar project, but instead, we went to start with Arduinos. So we have a lot of things to work on.
Monique, how does students at your institution get recruited in if they do?
Well, we have a couple of organizations. We have IEEE, we have SWE, which is Society of Women Engineers. We also have, it's Society of Mechanical Engineers, or Society of Manufacturing Engineers. There's lots of organizations. The one that I'm involved with is IEEE, and I specifically like robotics. So I try to, I have, since my specification is computer engineering, I'm usually a lot in the CS building. So a lot of CS students, they don't really have a lot of clubs at Texas State for CS students. So I try to recruit them because the heart and the brain of robotics is programming, I would say. And for a lot of electrical engineers, I would say a majority of electrical engineers in at Texas State are mainly micro nano specification or net and comm. So to merge the hardware side with the software side, I try to do. Yeah.
Okay, all right. To our university representatives here, what do you feel like is the best way to structure a curriculum? All the courses that you would build for a successful engineer. What's the best way to build a curriculum?
Yeah, starting from scratch is something, but changing that is
I know it's hard. It's hard. Let's say you've got a blank slate. You've got a whiteboard, and you were going to design the best curriculum. How would you get going in that?
So first of all, there are some national and international curriculum accreditations. So
Okay.
ABET is something that almost every program, there is a structure required.
Could you tell us what ABET stands for?
That's the hard one. Board of Engineers and Technology.
That sounds great.
Technologists, yes, almost.
Yes.
Close enough.
That's awesome. All right. Yes. So basically, it's one of the very important thing when you are accredited, while you are recognized. Lots of our students, we got accreditation for manufacturing about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Before that, some of our students went and working at Boeing. Their salaries are $15,000 less than the students came next year with the accreditation.
That's
So
a huge drop.
So even their level is from technician now to engineers. So it's a big difference when you get accreditation. So it's almost a must-have thing. And
So let me kind of peel the onion on that just a little bit. So what you're saying is, as soon as you reach this accreditation level, the salaries of your graduates went up 50,000?
50,000. We have some
That's
of them
incredible.
want to come back and
That's incredible.
take some of the courses. Yes.
Wow. Okay, well, go ahead. I was just amazed.
So basically, if you want a structure, you better go with those type of accreditations. So you basically, you have at least about 120 credit hours is based on that requirements, math requirements, science requirement, engineering requirement, design requirement. And there are very limited course left out that you can have some flexibility. And you have a state mandate now, 120 hours max.
Right.
Usually typical engineering should be 150 credit hours. Now we have to cut it down to 120 because of ABET requirement, we almost pushed it to 130. So with 130, you don't have much flexibility. About 120 is mandate for ABET requirement, and about 10 course, maybe 2-3 elective courses we have. So we give choices and we push any interest and market reactivity to that part.
So, I found it kind of interesting. We talked a little bit earlier briefly about involving industry in curriculum development, but what you're suggesting is there's not much room to involve them?
Honestly, no, we love it to get, we have industry advisory board, we have 20 members from local, big companies. They give us feedback, but there is not much room for us to do flexibility. What we can do is basically get their advice, apply to our coursework, applying to our senior design, applying to our other things, but it's structure-wise, it's really rigid.
So within courses, you have a little flexibility, but the courses themselves
Yes, you cannot play with that.
structured pretty much. How would you address that, Tricia?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of structure that's already in place, and there's a lot of good things that happen with that, and it's there for a reason. And ABET has come about with a lot of input from industry as well. I think some of the things that can improve that higher ed experience for the students and increase retention and improve those outcomes once they get to industry are some of those things that are hard to infuse into the classroom. And it's things like I mentioned earlier, the everyday examples. That requires faculty that have maybe been teaching the same course for a long period of time with the exact same examples to take that time to actually rework those examples and make them relevant and current to today's students and today's industry needs. I think it's also coming up with those creative ways to engage the students earlier. It's offering those best practices like a research experience during their undergraduate experience early on. UT has the freshman research experience out of the College of Natural Sciences that is known as one of the best practices in engineering education, and that's gotten a kind of an industry seal of approval behind it. And if we were to able to offer more programs like that throughout engineering schools, that would be huge. I think a lot of times within universities, it comes down to funding. We're very restricted on the funding that we have available. My entire program is funded by external funds. We don't get funding to do anything we do from the university. So external support from industry is really vital to be able to do these extra things to support the curriculum, to strengthen the curriculum, or to offer these things outside of the classroom time so that the students get those experiences that we need. And funding is huge.
Let's talk a little bit about research. Having them have research experience at the freshman level is quite impressive. Also a challenge for the faculty, I bet, because students have to be kind of guided through their first experiences with research. And it can take a lot of time from the faculty members, but well rewarded, I'm sure, particularly when they come back and speak to the new students that you mentioned a little bit earlier, Brian. Let me go down to Monique. Have you had an opportunity to have any research experience in your program?
It was available, and there was a lot of flyers around the building for this program, and I believe they even had flyers in the CS building.
Was this a requirement, or was this kind of a voluntary thing that you moved into?
No, this was a voluntary thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did some research, and then the semester got too hectic, so I had to stop and just focus on my grades. So it's kind of hard to do research and do your classes if it's not like built into your curriculum, I would say.
So having research as part of a course would be something that would kind of move you through.
It would be nice,
Okay.
yeah.
John, how about community? You mentioned robotics and so forth and so on, which is kind of like research. How does that work there?
Well, since this program is really new, we just start learning how to use the Arduinos, and then we work our way from there to actually find ways to, it depends on what kind of robot we want to make. If we're going to make a robot with good artificial intelligence, then that's when we need to research on how to make good algorithms for that. And for the movements of the robots, we need to find ways to what kind of materials would be good for robots, and those things really. And those will be a good research, but since most of us are new and we don't know much about robots yet, we still work on with Arduinos.
Let's step back a little bit and kind of move up. I used to call this at the 30,000 foot level, but you're looking kind of more broadly at how energy impacts the consumer. out there. And we're talking about the customer, the people that pay their power bills or buy the gas and so forth and so on. Is there any part of anyone's curriculum that's oriented toward the consumer or the customer as the final end buyer of this energy?
We recently got a fund from the Department of Education. It's 3 years multidisciplinary type of projects that we are sponsoring community colleges, 5 of them in local as well as Texas State program. So basically we started from beginning. So so it was kind of open-ended. We had flexibility what type of research and education we want to provide to them. So the first research we did was let's do the literature review and see what is the latest, what's the problem available. At first we were concerned that we may not find enough research areas to do. Then when we did, we found that it's very interesting. Is first of all, this location we are, state of Texas, is basically the crossroad for Sunbelt as well as wind column, if you want to consider it, Sunbelt states, and then we are the center of wind and solar energy. So it's lots of potential plus that oil and other energy resources. And then another literature review, we extended that. We found that lots of this research is very local. So when, for example, you want to study about the solar panel efficiency, solar panel has been around more than 100 years. We have some picture in our department, 100 years old car, solar energy powered. So it's nothing new, but it's lots of things improving efficiency is something very local. We studied, for example, the effect of cleaning solar panels toward the efficiencies. We found that every location has one type of impurity. Some has dust, some has algae, some has clay, some has growing something on that. So it's really local to local. It's not like universal cleaning method that you can find. Or even the angle and rotation and position, almost every location has its own. So what we found is basically we extended that research to make a different location because we are working with 5 different locations. We now have a central location for data collection and comparison. So we opened up lots of research for many majors. Now we have multidisciplinary program from biology, chemistry, math, industrial engineering, manufacturing engineering, electrical engineering, computer programming. Almost every faculty is involved, and we are out of workforce. We are looking for a student. We don't find enough. We are competing with local fast food. That's the thing, because they pay better than us. But sometimes, yeah, that's the thing. But students, that's going to be the type of thing that, as Monique mentioned, when they get burdened with the coursework, their efficiency on research, that's the first thing they cut is work. So that's the difficulty we have. So often we try to define it as a course project, so sponsoring a senior design, sponsoring a master thesis or PhD thesis, that's getting more efficient because they feel that this is part of the requirement. So we do that as well.
You mentioned interdisciplinary, and if you had to pick a discipline outside of the science, technology, engineering, or math area that would complement that kind of hardcore, what would you look at as being able to add some value to a STEM curriculum? Tricia, what would you pick?
I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, but I'm going to answer it in the way I think it's supposed to be. So I see a lot of different disciplines that come into play with engineering, with energy. It's communication, it's understanding how to communicate about what's going on, it's how to get it into the media, it's how to make it accessible to the public so that they understand the issues and the needs. I think it's a business issue. I think it's bringing in folks who understand economics, who understand finance, who understand how the markets all play. I think it's psychology. I think there's a variety of disciplines that come into any engineering problem that if you bring in those different backgrounds to look at it in a different way, you're able to get it out there perhaps to the masses a little bit better.
Well, that's a masterful answer. Would anyone like to add to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, nothing specific to a STEM program. It's almost everybody's life is related to energy. We need it. Water, energy is almost. And I see lots of students coming to me from other programs, psychology and social work and other things. They are interested in the green topic. And what I found is interesting is once you are a green person, you stay green. The mentality of students, as soon as they come to the lab and get involved a little bit, year after year, the project is related to green, and they think green, and so they get lots of other things, attachments coming to that. So it's not limited to just one program or anything. So it's almost, and I think we have a master program. It's just introduced at Texas State, multidisciplinary with lots of flexibility that everyone can take selected courses, and to be sustainability, I believe they call it.
Right.
So it's these type of courses and programs is introduced recently.
John, Monique, would you add to that? Apparently not. Okay. All right. Throw you a preserver here. Let's open it up to any questions that someone might have in the audience, and we'll answer those for you.
So you think with how, how important energy has become in the headlines these days in our economy, et cetera, you'd think there'd be a greater focus in the curriculum for the things you've been talking about. And clearly, we have an opportunity for, to run the economy better this way. But of course, with aging infrastructure and aging workforce, that skill set that came through to where we are today is getting hard to replace. And I know, a lot of businesses have to recruit offshore to find the people with the right kind of training. And with so many opportunities coming up with electric vehicles, et cetera, new fields, new opportunities, again, you'd think there'd be more to it. And maybe I'm just amplifying what you've been saying, but I'd really like to kind of hear your thoughts in terms of, in the ideal world, what kind of programs do you think we should be having, or how should they be steering students? Because if you say people don't even think about it till they're in the program and they're not taught it, where is the next generation going to come from? I mean, you guys are great examples of what we should be seeing millions of people doing. And you hear Obama talking about investing in science and math and bringing our scores up through the education system. And there's just a real disconnect that's happening here, and it's great to see you guys here. But I feel like you're at the head of a pin and there's not much behind it.
I'll just comment on that, I think it's that there's a lot of challenges that we have. I don't know if you're familiar with the grand challenges that the National Academy of Engineering put out, but there's 14 grand challenges that experts across the globe identified that it's going to take engineers to solve as we move into the next century. And there's things around healthcare. So is energy more important than healthcare issues that are going on? I don't know. Our infrastructure, you talked about that, and it's, looking at our roads and our bridges and our buildings and what's going to happen with them as they continue to age. There's a lot of issues that are out there that demand our engineering expertise. And so I think it's not that there's necessarily a lack of focus on energy in our engineering disciplines. I think it's that there are a lot of competing interests and a lot of really important issues that our students are getting spread across. And is one more important than the other? Is one getting more attention than the other? I don't know. I think there's a lot of noise, and it's trying to figure out how to make sure that our students, you talked about passion, our students find the thing that's most interesting to them, and we get them in and through and out there to industry, and then industry figures out how to change their culture so that they stay once they're there. So it's a whole kind of gamut of issues.
It should start early. So I believe it should start around elementary education level, starting to introduce heavily more science STEM topics, talking about energy and things of that nature, and presenting it in a way that's fun and exciting. Because I guess as you're young, it's easier to shape you. So, and as you get older, you get a little bit more stubborn, and you get stuck with other topics that you think that are a lot more important when, if you could have got yourself in a setting earlier on, like in elementary, and been excited about that topic, you could have pursued that. So I think it starts early, and I would say marketability of the subject is very important. So.
Your story was interesting when you talked about how you sat on the sofa and you just realized you wanted a future of robots, and I forget everything else on the list. I'm curious to know how you took that interest from a board, your board, B-O-R-E-D, a board afternoon, into becoming an engineer. Because I wasn't clear that your family paved the way for you, and almost everyone on the panel talked about family, but I'm more curious to know, how is STEM and engineering going to happen for the millions or majority of U.S. citizens that don't have family members that they can relate to on any level? Because I never even heard of engineering until I was an adult, and I certainly couldn't have majored in something I'd never even heard of. So I'm curious how you became bored, how you were bored, and turned that into what you are today.
Well, after I had that vision, I was doing a lot of research on the computer to see what I can do to see that world. So I realized that you need to learn, I need to learn a lot of technical things and all the subjects that I need to take in school. So with that motivation from that vision, I can study countless hours without being tired. And I want more than that, because studying in class is not enough for me. So I just started a STEM Academy so I have more fun experiences with a major outside of what I'm learning in classrooms. And I was hoping that I found other people like me to be on board in STEM Academy as well.
What is the STEM Academy?
It's a student organization. So we get students involved too. We're trying to get them involved.
And I can add one thing. One way that we try to attract more students to this program, especially the one you mentioned, underrepresented group, minority, and female are in STEM are really low. We have several types of camps that is week-long summer camp. It's lots of work for us, but it's very rewarding. Basically, we bring them. We go recruit mostly in middle school. High school almost is too late. It looks like they already decided. So we bring middle school kids and we start teaching them. We give them good type of attractions, like offering cash or toys or whatever they want to buy from bookstore. So for the first 2 days, 3 days, they say, where do we get our cash, or when do we get our toys or video games? But starting day 3 or 4, now they are thinking about the project. It's a project-based, step-by-step, that the final day they totally forget about what was the attraction they came to, and mostly they're thinking about the project and bringing their family. And I've seen, just talked during the lunchtime, lots of the students, they come after 4 or 5 years, they come to me and they thank me and say, who are you? And says, I was in your camp 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, I
it's
see.
paying back in long term.
Yeah.
I think Monique was one of our students a while back.
Oh, my.
Yes.
And also I had something to add to what I said earlier. My motivation also came from worrying about the pollution that we keep causing for the planet. And the current technology that we have right now is it's destroying it with global warming. So I'm also concerned with finding ways to produce clean energy that's renewable without the uses of fossil fuels. So the concernment of those things really got me motivated as well.
As one of those older people who's inflexible in their learning styles, I agree with you. When I graduated from engineering, I got one of the first degrees in the country in EECE. That was 1977 in Montana State. And I didn't really realize how lucky I was, because we had all the ICBM missile systems out there, and my electrical engineering department had 200 students and 40 profs. And so, oh my God, it was horrible. Every class had a project. The only reason I made it through the system was we had a quarter system, and you could get 2 weeks of sleep every quarter. And I kind of missed out, because I came to engineering, I was one of the first batches where it was only a 4-year program instead of a 5-year program. And I always keep looking back at it. The reason we had a 5-year program is because MIT created engineering schools, because the British couldn't figure out how to engineer radars, so we did it for them. So engineering was created to create jamming to knock Hitler out. So if you look at that evolution of discipline, I think we've lost a lot of that. So I asked, what did I miss by getting a 4-year engineering degree instead of a 5-year engineering degree? And essentially it was a lot of industrial engineering, there was a lot of economics, and there was a lot of business. And so, like a fool, I took all the electives, never got a master's in industrial engineering, but I did essentially get a 5-year program. So I think you can graduate from high school now and not even know what economics is. If you look at Ontario, when I went to school, it was, you went 13 years. And I don't know if they still do that or not. So there is, the complexity relative to our schooling is going backwards. And I don't really know how to address that, but as General Patton said, the least incompetent usually wins. So if everybody else on 12-year system, maybe we have a chance of winning. I don't know. But one thing, back to your comments about the STEM from ACC. Eric Schmidt from Google there's an organization around Cambridge. The Arduino and the Raspberry Pi came from Cambridge University. That's where it was designed. So they gave 15,000 Raspberry Pis to an organization that was elementary, middle school, high school, and community college. And that was, I don't know, 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago now. Nobody ever talks about it, and I don't know what the outcome of that program was, but that's where it really starts. So maybe we ought to look at what other people are doing, because Python programming can be done by a 5th grader. It's real easy, it's a nice language, and they get excited about that. They want to do Minecraft, you know? The other comment about exciting people, I was at South by Southwest last weekend, and there was this experience where I had all of the makers over in the Long Center, and there was the STEM table, but downstairs was a bunch of high school teachers who had their own little tables, and they were just showing what they were doing in science. And there's one table, they were teaching people how to solder. And the thing that I was amazed by it, we stood there and watched it. My wife drugged me down there. You know, I was upstairs watching the open source robot that Rice University had made for all the schools. And she said, "You're missing it all." So we went downstairs and we watched it. It was primarily families, older girls and younger girls, and they're just fascinated by soldering. And they got excited. And that's what it's all about, how to excite it. But excitement has to be a one-on-one human endeavor. And you got to get that excitement. Excitement's not enough. You have to have follow-on. So I think there's some lessons that we can learn from the Raspberry Pi experiment in Britain. And the other thing, back to your question, you don't really know what engineering is because they're teaching the introduction to engineering courses at the universities instead of the community colleges, where it should be taught in high school. I don't know how you get around that problem. I was raised on a farm, and a final story. I found this rocket motor, and I bought it, and it said hydrogen and oxygen. And on the farm, we had acetylene torch. Hydrogen, acetylene torch. How does substitute? Well, it blew up, and I have a minor scar on my chin, but I did follow the safety mirror, and it blew out 6 inches of concrete. So you really need the theory.
Definitely important to understand. Okay.
Maybe one last question. Do you have one up there?
So I really appreciate what ACC is doing for having a good technical training that can lead to a 4-year degree or not necessarily lead to a 4-year degree. I've went through the program myself. I'm currently working for Austin's solar program. So it's gotten me into a great place, but I see a big disconnect right now between engineers and electricians. And I would love to see that addressed more often because it creates, so much struggle in the workforce everywhere. So I would really like to see some more cross-training between the trade and, the 4-year degree engineer type and the electricians. So, maybe throughout, and not just like a day, a token, it's going to be eye-opening, enlightening, but throughout the training on both sides, we really need some cross-training. And I think it would do the workplace, like actual people working, a ton of good. Do you guys see any initiatives to get some cross-training out there?
I never thought about having a cross training, but I think it'll be a good idea for to have a career when you work with engineers. So I'll see what I can do with that. And when I talk to Dr. Rose of ACC, he's the president of the school, I'll see what I can do with that.
And I haven't seen anything like that in the university setting, but I will say when I worked at Dow Chemical, one of the things that we had was operator training. So as chemical engineers, when we started out, you knew pretty quickly that the operators, the technicians in the plants were the ones that had all the history. They knew what was going on. They knew how to fix it. And if you came in as a fresh college grad thinking you knew it all, you were dead in the water. It wasn't going to happen. And there was a great operator training that we did that sent all of the new chemical engineers through this training so we could get that technician training as well, and we could understand what it's like to run the machines, to run in the middle of the night troubleshooting what's going wrong when half the plant goes down and what's that like. So there was some of that was happening on the industry side, but I haven't seen anything like that within the higher ed space, unfortunately. I think it's talked about sometimes. I think there's those conversations about understanding the different trades where there's a lot of overlap, the knowledge that different folks bring in. But I don't know how much of that happens within the classroom or in those external programs like what I typically run, where we're bringing in those external industry guests to share what it's really like. So unfortunately, there's probably a lot of work to be done in that space.
Yeah, I would add that I think that there should be some type of, level with a tradesperson or like doing a co-op with them for a summer, like as a requirement or something like that, that just gets you to be around someone in an industry and know how to tackle those problems that you're gonna see on a day-to-day basis doing that kind of job. I would also like to see a lot of mentor work. There's not a lot of that. There's this website called MindSumo that I just came across like 2 weeks ago, and it's pretty cool. It has incentives to for you to, there's basically companies that put out challenges that they want you to solve, and they give you money for it if you do it, or just recognition. And also with that site, you can also sign up and get a mentor. And I just received a mentor who's, he has a bachelor's in electrical engineering and a master's in electrical engineering from Harvard. So just to be able to, talk to people who have been successful and, get pointers from them, that'd be great as well, I would think.
Please help me thank our panelists today. Thank you very much.